Agency began yesterday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. No movement for the Kings yet, but some in the works. Some going down.
We'll see, man.
I hope so. Maybe. Question mark.
It's been exciting, except for nothing has actually happened, and that's always when you start to get a little nervous. Just that, you would hope that the Kings would actually make some big moves here, but sometimes those take a little while, and sometimes the market has to cool down as far as the free agent market in order to make those moves. And look, I think they're in on Brandon Ingram. We know that at this point, but they're also there might be another name, Kyle. Another name.
Oh, what name is that?
I heard a little bit this morning. I don't know if we, it's not something that's super solid, but I'm hearing that there's a potential for, the Kings to kick the tires on a Lauri Markkanen trade. So, but we'll see.
There's another name to throw in the mix.
We're just gonna throw it out there, just a name in the mix. Nothing like super solid. But Lauri Markkanen does sound like is becoming available with Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
And if he's going to become available, then the Kings need to do their due diligence there and see if they 1,000%. Can get in on the conversation.
Yeah, 1,000%. And that's why I think what you said there is important. It's not like, hey, firm reporting that A, B, and C are happening. But if we're going to talk about Kyle Kuzma and if we're going to talk about Brandon Ingram, we can now throw Lauri Markkanen into that mix of player that may be available, that the Kings that certainly fits with what the Kings are looking for and what they need.
Mm-hmm.
So we can put him in that mix as well. But let's start with Brandon Ingram.
Yes.
Because that was the big deal yesterday. And again, keep it locked into ESPN 1320 through the insiders here. We're hanging out with you till noon. Then D'Lo and KC will pick it up at noon. They'll take you to 4 o'clock. Any news that is happening, we will bring it to you. And we will have the best analysis for you of anything going on with your Sacramento Kings. But for now, we have a report from friend of the oh boy, here we go. 3, 2, and 1. Friend of the program, Sean Cunningham, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham, that says the Kings are having talks with the Pelicans about a Brandon Ingram trade. I think you and I both are in on the Brandon Ingram idea, just from the player, the fit, what he brings to the table. What would that cost, though? Because that, to me, feels like the kind of deal where you might have to include Keegan Murray.
Yeah, I don't think the Kings are going to do anything that includes Keegan Murray. Now,
sure.
At least for right now, we never know. I don't ever want to say,
never say never.
Never say never.
Sure.
I mean, that's for sure. But as of right now, look, the Kings believe he's part of their core, and they also believe that he's better than a lot of the players, or he's going to be a better player than a lot of these players that we're talking about. The Brandon Ingram thing, look, if we're going to assemble a trade, it would be centered around Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter, from what I've heard, and then some sort of pick compensation. But that's just to match salaries. The Pelicans, from what I know, from what I've heard from sources elsewhere, are looking for someone. They're looking for a center, and they would like a third team involved potentially. And whether the Kings can make that happen or not, I don't know. Whether the Pelicans can make that happen, they can draw somebody else in and say, hey, you can have this player or this pick compensation or whatever, but we're looking for this. Just a banny about, like we talked about, me and Kyle before the show. Could you get Atlanta involved with Clint Capella?
Yeah.
Who's in the final year of a $23 million deal? And, could the Kings send a Huerter and Duarte package to Atlanta with Capella going to the Pelicans along with Harrison Barnes and some compensation, whatever. Again, we're just spitballing here. Who knows what will happen with that? But Brandon Ingram's on a 1-year, $36 million contract, and you can't just trade for a guy and you can trade for a guy and instantly negotiate a contract extension, but the initial contract extension that you can negotiate is very small. It's a 2-year deal with only 5% raises, and it's very limited as to what you can give somebody. So you would basically, you have to wait a 6-month waiting period, which throws everything kind of in flux. You wouldn't find out if you were able to retain either Brandon Ingram or Lauri Markkanen until January. That's
Mhm.
when you would really be able to negotiate in earnest with these guys on a long-term contract extension, and that that gets a little scary.
Yeah, and that's where I think one of the big hangups for me would be with this is because you would need to talk with Brandon Ingram's agent or Laurie Markkinen's agent, and in I don't know that you could insure and get a guarantee,
Mhm.
but gauge the interest because if Brandon Ingram straight up says no, I won't re-sign with Sacramento, then okay, maybe you're thinking about this deal a little differently.
Yeah.
I think you'd still want to acquire him,
Yeah, and
even
try
if
to
it's
change his
just for a
mind.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know now that I'm attaching 3 first-round picks to it
Oh, no.
or anything like that. So and same goes for Laurie Markkinen, but I think that has to be not the number one thing because I do think at some point you have to make some kind of move. Because if you're waiting on some guarantee beyond like, yeah, maybe I'll resign, then you're probably never going to get anything done.
Yeah, and I think that that's the problem. I mean, we're watching so many free agents come off the board like every
Mm-hmm.
day. It started yesterday at 3, and it was really a slow play.
Very odd.
It wasn't like your normal. The rules have changed in
Mm-hmm.
the NBA with tampering, and so really it felt kind of awkward and weird. It almost like a trade deadline that fizzles.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're sitting here waiting for things to come through, and nothing is really coming through. And so, the whole time you're like, what's going to happen? But then all of a sudden, boom, 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 you start seeing some of the guys that I know a lot of Kings fans like Najee Marshall
Mm-hmm.
or Derrick Jones Jr., all of
Zeke
these,
Naji.
yeah, these long athletic wings coming off the board. And that's the type of guy that the Kings need.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just kind of watching everybody else get better. But I would point out that, like, look, there's a couple of mechanisms here in play. And it's something that I think people should keep in mind that just because players are signing right now at different places and
Mm-hmm.
you may like that player, it doesn't mean that the Kings can't go use their mid-level exception and go trade for a player like that
Mm-hmm.
that's out there. They can. There are going to be players once the dust settles
Yeah.
that teams need to reconfigure their
Yes.
salary structure, and the Kings will be able to get back into the market and go find some of these players.
Right.
You need to get the big deal done first so you're not tying yourself up and limiting what you can do cap wise.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so painful to watch a sort of these trade ideas or these trade rumors play out over a day, 2 days. That's not what you need at this moment. This moment, you need something that's secured, something that will happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that is going to happen. And then boom, it's over. And now you can go put the rest of the pieces together.
Yeah, and I think that's where I don't want to call it frustration because I don't think there's frustration, but there's an angst because, like you said, okay, we've been talking about Kyle Kuzma, and there was smoke on draft day that Kyle Kuzma, and there's a going to be a deal for Kuzma in the lead up to the 13th pick, and then nothing. Now we hear about Brandon Ingram. Oh, and now hey, is Laurie Marketing going to be available? Okay, hey, he fits too, and it's like okay, this is all great, but is what comes of all this?
Yeah.
Because at this point, if they're not landing one of those 3 guys, and I understand that what you're saying, teams are going to have to reconfigure what their rosters look like, and there's going to be players available for the mid level or part of the mid level or whatever it is. But I don't think I don't think the Kings are done making moves necessarily if they don't get one of these 3 guys. But anything they do outside of Ingram, Marketing, or Kuzma is going to feel super underwhelming to me.
No, I think that's the problem. What this feels like right now is when Monty McNair took over the team,
Mm-hmm.
they went into that offseason, and it was the shortened, the COVID shortened
Yeah.
offseason after the bubble, and things did not go as planned. So
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that Monty was able to do was he drafted, which Tyrese Halliburton,
Mm-hmm.
which was spectacular. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it took a little while, and he signed Glenn Robinson the third and Hassan Whiteside. At this point, the Kings have traded for Jalen McDaniels, and they've signed, or they're going to sign, Alex Len.
Mm-hmm.
That feels eerily similar. And they went out and they drafted Devin Carter.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, this is a moment though where you have to. Again, I keep saying this: you don't have to make a trade just to make a trade.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make a trade because you're not good enough. Your team did not make the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
and one draft pick doesn't help you make the playoffs.
Mm-mm.
Not this year. Like 2
Mm-mm.
years from now, maybe Devin Carter is part of the program and it helps you
Sure.
win
I
something
think he will be.
bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very possible, and I really like him. But at the same time, you have to like jump
No.
into the fray here. I always think of you'll as an A's fan, this Terrence Long sitting with the bat on his shoulder watching strike 3 go by in the playoffs.
I mean,
Uh,
you don't have to bring
that
up bold stuff.
well, but that's what this feels like
Doing the
in the
ass out
past.
thing on the two-seamer. It's Derek Lowe. You know the two-seamer's coming.
You know it's coming.
Like, anyway.
So you understand what I'm saying, though? Like, this is a moment to take the bat off your shoulder and take a big hack. And I think there are fallback plans here. I think
Sure.
like Kyle Kuzma could be a fallback plan here.
Mhm.
But what are you going to do right now? And that's the question. And like, look, all of these things come with a certain degree of risk, but that's where like you're at a position in your build. You have to take the risk. You have
Yeah.
to put yourself out there and try to improve the roster, especially with what's happening in the Western Conference.
Well, and this is where it's not. I understand the concept of not making a deal just to go make a deal, and I don't think that's the case here because there are players available, according to reporting.
Mhm.
There are players available who could help the Kings.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
Kings theoretically have the assets to go get them, which is where I think there's a lot of people are sitting here going, hey, now's the time. Like the boat's coming around. You got to jump on.
Yeah.
Because it's got to be the right time and it's got to be the right trade. Well, the time feels pretty right and the trades are all there. And I'm sorry, at some point coming up short and going, oh, well, they tried it. They explored it. But the deal just wasn't right. Or, oh, they got outbid or whatever it is. That's not gonna fly now.
No, I totally agree. And I think there's a certain amount of risk that the Kings aren't willing to do. And
Sure.
I still think that,
Sure.
again, Keegan Murray is a player that's not going to be on the
Which is fine.
table as long as they can possibly not have him on the table. But that doesn't change the fact that you have a really, really strong core of 4, and you need to find a way to make that core 5 or 6.
Get him over the hump.
And you got to get over. Exactly.
Yep.